So I've decided to do a video about all the Okojo stuff that I have. I've collected a decent amount, as you can see, over the years. I got the full DVD set, phone card, the manga over here, which I read in the years that no episodes came out. I just thought you might want to see what kind of stuff is out there, stuff that's actually, directly related to the show, and the lesser known stuff like the manga, things like this. Probably break this down to a couple segments, go over the DVDs and then the books and some of the miscellaneous stuff. Show where I keep some of them in my house, and I'll probably show off a little bit of how I fan sub, what goes into it at the end, if you want to see it. But yeah, enjoy the video. And first up, we have this book. It's the manga. It's kind of like a reprint to coincide with the manga, as you can see by the little wraparound on the front. It's still got the original art in color, splash page, and then we use stuff from the anime for rundowns on all the characters and stuff for people who have or haven't watched anime, and then they got this weird kind of red colored monochrome page. But yeah, I believe this has mostly like just hand-picked chapters from the manga, which I guess makes sense considering like the manga had a lot of like the shoujo manga mixed in on the side, so this is kind of just like straight lining all the Okojo stuff. And as you can see, some of the stuff is just beat for beat adapted into the anime, which is actually kind of nice to see. The anime itself is pretty great, but some of the wacky moments are still in the manga. It's yeah. And as you can see here, it's the one where Okojo gets fat. Dosun. It's like a sumo wrestler. Can't catch Choroi. Yeah, see, and it kind of looked different in anime, but it kind of plays out the same still. Gets chased by Taromaru. That's how he loses weight. Tachin. Triangle mouth. got the fox, the part where the fox trains him. Trains him the ways of the wild. Yeah, he doesn't show up very much in the anime. He's mostly in the Bancho episodes. And where he commandeers a bear and the bear does not like him. As told in the flashbacks. And here you have Okojo trying to hunt some mice, and then he gets attacked by a swarm and finds some fried chicken. Nice piece of karaage. And then they have these side ones, Okojo Gaiden. I can't remember if these were in the anime or not. Might be just for this special volume. I know this was in the anime. It's where his dad was trying to milk the cow. Yeah, it's the stuff with his dad. It's in the one flashback. So that might be part of it too. Just little things are in this one, but not the other ones. Owari. That's the end. You get your credits. And Tsuchiya and Yuta on the back. If you would like to see more of the manga, just stick around for the end of the video, because that is where I put this stack in the middle, just because most of it's kind of the same thing that's in this one, with minor things for the shoujo chapters and stuff that are in there. But yeah, be sure to stick around if you want to watch it. And then I framed it because it actually looks pretty nice, but if you take it apart, I'll show you that it's actually a phone card. Phone cards are like highly collectible in the, I guess like the late 90s, early 2000s, maybe the early 90s too. Just like a prepaid phone cards they used to have here, but they would have special designs on them. This one just happens to have the design on the card that fits into an overlay that you can set the card into, which looks pretty cool because it's got the, you know, the original art in it from the manga. So I put it in a frame. Look at that. And then we have these little plushies. We got a little Okojo. There's his butt. That one's not bad. It's just his tail makes him fall over a lot. He's kind of small. And then I got this can badge a while ago. It was done for the 40th anniversary of Lala. And it's, of course, got the manga illustration on it. So put it in a little display case. And then I got a little Tachin. He's a little bigger than the first Okojo. But, you know, there's not a lot of Tachin stuff that I've seen. I mean, there's not a lot of Okojo stuff in general, but yeah. He sits okay most of the time. There we go. And then the soundtrack. Well, at least one of the openings. It's the second one. Comes on a little mini disc. Look at that. You don't see mini discs hardly ever. It was already open. It was just, you know, kind of in a plastic sleeve. Gotta have that spine card. Collector's value. Yeah, you'll probably hear this track right about now. Yeah, it's a little mini disc. I believe the booklet probably has the karaoke lines on it. It's kind of a fun design on it. And try to, I won't really go back in the plastic. But here we have a pencil board, also known as a shitachiki. This one is actually featured in the anime, but as you can see, it says Okojo Bancho, and it has Okojo Bancho on it. And he has this little mantle that says Otoko on the back, just like in this frame. They actually had it in the anime, you know, where he was selling Okojo Goods. But that's what it looks like in real life. And it's got a silhouette on the back in white, and it says Otoko. Very striking. A little seal of quality there. Yeah. Then on to the bigger Nuigurumi. It's got some nice little like felt leaf and a little more details. He's softer. He's got his little marks on him. Again, it's got the Okojo seal. And it's got some nice little details. It's got plastic eyes and whiskers. It doesn't really show up good on camera. Then of course there's the Okojo Bancho plushie. This one's a little slightly different. It kind of feels like the same one dressed up, and his face maybe looks a little different, but he's got a nice little outfit. Got his tail. Of course, the seal of approval from the set of 5, which I've never seen the other parts of the set. Don't look too hard, but it'd be cool to find them. And then here's where I keep them in my house. You see I have like a little shelf with the badges and the display holders on them, which are just like plastic membranes. Yeah, it's pretty easy to display them, like unless you want to get like some sort of pin board. But I kind of like this. They look more like artsy fartsy. And my desk where I keep the little Okojos. And Hank Howell's there too. I keep all the little ones on my desk since they fit there pretty nicely. And then I have a little close-up of the one riding Rapido. And then I have a actual picture someone drew of my character. Of course, I paid them, but, you know, still, I was a fan of Okojo. Her name is Decaf Bad, if you want to look her up on Tumblr. She does some pretty good artwork. This one was done on... gosh, I forget what you call it, but, you know, it was done on paper. There's a digital version of it. Yeah, she did some pretty good work. And I keep it in my house, hanging on the wall. I hung it on the wall so I can look at it every day. And then as a nice little bonus, here's what she drew on the packaging that she kind of sandwiched the picture in so it didn't get damaged. I thought it was pretty cute. She went the extra mile, which I can appreciate. Alright, so lastly, we have the DVDs. They're nothing too exciting. Around the time Okojo came out was the early 2000s, so DVDs were pretty new. So they're kind of, you know, just lackluster. I think it might have been one of those things you could only rent too, because when I looked it up, all of them seemed to be ex-rental copies, which kind of makes sense considering they might have been prohibitively expensive to most at the time. Because it was also on VHS. But as you can see, a lot of these are kind of sun-bleached. Some of them are on the face, but most of them are on the spine. Likely because it was sitting on a shelf for quite a while. Who knows how long, but it probably had like a couple facing out to attract people's attention, and the rest of them are all bookended. But nothing too crazy. It just kind of, each one has, you know, some key art from the show, and then a kind of synopsis on the back of every episode on there. The DVD themselves are pretty plain Jane, but it is cool to have it on DVD. These are what I used to rip for the show. I imported them myself, and they they weren't cheap by any means, but I think they're around $100 at the time. And got Kojoru, everyone's favorite character. Okojo's on a leash. Yeah, I remember that episode. We met that punk kid. Oh, there's Mecha Okojo. Yeah, as you can see, that one's bleached too. But overall, they're in pretty good shape. Took a long time to rip them too. But again, the thing with most Japanese DVDs, especially older ones, is they do not have like closed captions or subtitles of any kind on most DVDs, so couldn't use those in the process of subtitling it. Yeah, that's all the DVDs. Now onward to the fan subbing process, if you were ever curious about it. Okay, so normally what I do is go in, open Aegis subs. I have copies that I made as SRTs, but the standard is the AS format. Let's see, and then it'll ask you if you want to load the other associated files. If you want to do a bump mat or actually encoded this video. And then it'll load it up. And you get a little preview window up here. Yeah, these, the karaoke ones are, I mean, they're a little bit more time consuming the timeout because they already have karaoke subtitles on the screen. So you end up just having to do it frame by frame. Over here it lists the timing, but you can switch it to do it by frame, which is right here. So then you just kind of want to make sure the top and the bottom one lines up with the Romaji and the Japanese. But yeah, you can just arrow through them, and like that one, it's got like a couple frames before it's solid, so it's a little off. But yeah, you can just use keyboard shortcuts to reset them to the exact frame you're on. So that's what that is. You just kind of go through each line, time the English subtitles to appear exactly with the Japanese ones, kind of like that. And then I have the ones for my credits in there. But yeah, you just do that for the whole thing. And then for the actual dialogue is where this comes in. It's like a visualizer for the audio. You can kind of see that, you know, you get like these peaks where there's actual like audio, but you kind of want to single out the actual dialogue. Like that. And you can hit spacebar and you can play that. That's where the Tencho finds Okojo and he says, "Mitsukete Okojo." So these bars are kind of like the start and end of the subtitles. You can just drag and drop them. It's like that. Or you can click here and then click there. And then when you hit enter, it finalizes it and it goes to the next line if you have one. But the problem is, like, when you're doing this by hand, you end up having to like put this one in, hit enter, and then you have to like scroll through this, find the next one, and then single that out, and then now you can sell them for a high price. But yeah, it won't commit the line until you hit enter, or I think it's Alt G. But basically, you just go through, single out all the lines of dialogue, and you make sure, you know, you want it to be on screen when they're talking. You don't want it to be before they're talking, but it can be a little bit after, but you don't necessarily want it to be, you know, hanging around after a transition, like it switches from one shot to another. Like that one's kind of okay because the audio trails over, but you wouldn't necessarily want it to appear while another character's on screen or something like that. I believe these lines show like key intervals right here. But
It's fairly straightforward. It's just time consuming. And then this is what I use for the image for this episode, for the thumbnail. As you can see, you can adjust the sizing on here. You can make it smaller. And then usually when I'm going through and checking out the lines, you just, you kind of go like this, and then you can kind of just play through it. But the nice thing is, like, it'll highlight whatever line you're on in yellow, so as you're playing through it, you can stop it and see exactly where you left off. And of course, it's got the framing and timing data down here. Yeah, that's about the gist of it. It's mostly about timing things, and I go through and I get every line timed out first before I start translating it, unless it's like something super easy I can just bang out. But a lot of it's, you go through the whole episode, do that. That takes quite a while, depending on how much talking there is in the episode. Like this one has, probably about 300 something lines, excluding the karaoke, but it's about 370 with the karaoke in there. And of course, you got to time out the dialogue, and then also the credits. I'm not sure why that's slightly off. But yeah, with these, it's a little bit more touchy because you time out to the credits. So as they're on screen, you just have it on there while they're there, but then you also have to put in the colors, which would use these, and you kind of fill that in. That color, not the fill, but you get the idea. You have to match the fill to what's on there. So you want it to look relatively similar. I just made it white because I feel like the white is easier to read than the pink, at least in English, because they're a little bit more condensed, not as spread out. But yeah, that's mostly what goes into an episode, and then encoding it is just a matter of finding the program of your choice and combining them into one. Re-renders it with the subtitles over it, unless you're doing a soft sub, and then it just kind of puts them in a container together. I did hard subs for YouTube because it's easy to upload and it's easy for playback. I have made soft subs available, but I stuck with the hard subs because they're easier for playback, whereas soft subs you can tweak the subtitle files and fonts and all that, but it also requires like a player to play them back, which is not a huge deal, but still. But yeah, that's mostly what goes into it. Just takes a lot of time, like you can see here. Did some on-screen stuff. You translate the stuff on screen, you want it to kind of blend in so it looks a little bit more organic. And of course it has to be timed out, and then you have to match the colors to make it look a little better. Yeah, that's about how much goes into it. It just takes quite a lot of effort to do by yourself.